Hello and welcome to Smaulgld. In case you missed it, top gold, silver, and crypto stories for the week ended August 12, 2018. Tariffs begin to bite, fallout from Trump tariffs starting to be felt in many areas. China blinks on U.S. oil tariffs, and Alex Jones booted from Apple, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Discus, LinkedIn, and other social media platforms. Tesla's CEO electrifies markets with a going private tweet. The Turkish lira and other emerging market currencies took a dive, and New York Stock Exchange owner ICE is in a Bitcoin venture with Starbucks in Microsoft, and another Bitcoin ETF was rejected. These are some of the stories we're going to be covering in this week's update. Keep in mind, you can still order your Smaulgld Super Classic mug for $23.99 with free shipping in the continental United States. They ship directly from Smaulgld headquarters, as does the Smaulgld Classic mug for $19.99. All other Smaulgld items, including the Smaulgld Espresso mug and travel mugs, they are shipped from the Smaulgld distributor. So if you want to get that one, you can. It's still an easy process. You just click on the icon, but it doesn't get delivered directly from me. Okay, let's take a look now at what we had during the week. As you know, we have been doing live streams every night at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on YouTube. And there's so much news to cover, so I try to cover a bit each and every day. And this podcast is meant to be a recap. So if you're interested in any of the stories that we don't discuss in detail today, you can go back and there's probably a YouTube in greater detail that may last 20 minutes, 30 minutes, or even up to an hour. And what we covered earlier this week was Starbucks to accept Bitcoin as payment. And we covered the impact of that deal. I'm not going to go through the ins and outs of that today. We had a Smaulgld subscriber episode with Ann Reff, and we talked in detail about deflation in the digital dark age, and I went through a history of money in central banks. It's a very interesting interview if you got the time to listen to that one. It's worth your time. The central bank gold agreements and their impact on the financial system. We went through the 4 major gold central bank agreements, including the most recent one, and their agreements. Mostly they are European central banks that agree on how much gold, if any, they're going to sell for the next 4 years. We talked about the dark side of rising real estate prices in another episode, and we tried to answer the question, how much gold does China really have? We also discussed the recent minimum wage case in which a Starbucks employee managed to recoup about $100 for closing up the shop, and we talked about the pros and cons of that decision. I was also on Wall Street for Main Street with Jason Barak, and we talked about China versus the U.S. in a trade war. Who wins? That interview lasts also about 50 minutes. While Turkey's president says buy gold a couple of years ago, just the other day he says sell gold. Both moves or both requests were to protect the lira. We discussed that for quite some time in that podcast, and just last night we talked about what's wrong with artificially low and negative interest rates. And there you see Mug Life, the Smaulgld travel mug, all decked down. And that comes to us from Joshua Roberts, Smaulgld subscriber and follower, probably the longest standing Smaulgld subscriber. When I did a CBS radio show back with Ryan Sloper, going back 7 or 8 years, Jason Robert was with us then, Joshua Roberts was with us then, and he continues now with Smaulgld for the since 2013. So I believe I started the CBS podcasts, the radio broadcasts, in 2010 or 11, and Joshua was one of the first listeners there. So thanks for this graphic as well. Gold closed down. It's just about $1,211. Silver $1,527. So they're hovering at their lows for the year. Not much movement this week, but the gold-silver ratio remains at 79-1. And there's Joshua's tweet on Mug Life. Also, another Smaulgld subscriber here, Bye Bye Bull, showing us you can put silver in a mug. And there's his picture of his Smaulgld mug, which he purchased, received, and poured his silver $50 there. I see a Barber $50, and I see looks like a Franklin and a Walking Liberty as well. All right, let's see what else we got. There's your gold-silver ratio. Not going to talk about the gold-silver ratio. By the way, if you want a game changer eraser, we do have contests every few evenings on the Smaulgld live stream where you can win a game changer eraser, or you can bypass trying to win one and you can go directly to the Smaulgld store and you can buy one there directly, and they don't cost much. They're $3.25 each, and it does help out the Smaulgld site. Also, if you want to help out the Smaulgld site, you can donate to Smaulgld via PayPal, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Litecoin. All the links are below this YouTube, this BitChute, and this on the Smaulgld website. Now, I do want to make a pitch for subscribing to Smaulgld outside of YouTube, just because what we saw, one of the topics we're going to cover is the Alex Jones ban. I'm trying to also, not that I anticipate getting booted from any of these platforms, but you never know. They could just boot people not for any particular reason, or not even a nefarious reason. They just decide they don't want user-generated content and they want to go because it's not profitable, and they want to go to a TV style model. So my recommendation is, no matter what happens, you're probably best off also taking the time to subscribe to Smaulgld and your other favorite content providers over on BitChute, or maybe on Gab, or on Minds, or Real Video, the alternative channels. I am not yet on Real Video, but I am on BitChute, I am on Gab, I am on Minds.com, and I'm on Steemit as well. And also, if you want to go one step further, donating is also a very helpful thing to do for the content providers. All right, so Trump won a victory with this Republican Troy Balderson in Ohio. It was a special election. The guy had been down, came back because of a Trump visit, but this also was a Republican seat for 30 years, so the fact that he was down in the first place is odd. But again, this was a special election. The two will face off again. I think his name was O'Connor versus Balderson. The Democrat was O'Connor. They'll face off again in November. Well, let's talk quickly about this free speech issue. I mean, you've probably heard so many comments on it. You probably have a ingrained concept yourself on what's right and what's wrong, and whether what the tech giants did was the right thing to do. And I would imagine everyone is pretty much, after a week of digesting the news, has their point of view. My point of view is basically that I don't think it's up to the tech giants to toss people off platforms. I take the view, not on the public forum basis. I don't take, you can imagine, I always never take that there's two views. I usually take a third. Just like with the Bitcoin debate, Bitcoin's going to take over central banking is one view. The other view is they're going to shut it down. I say no, they're not going to do either. They're going to co-opt it and embrace it. All right. On the free speech issue, there's two sides. They can do whatever they want. They're private companies, and therefore they can and should shut these offensive actors down. Now, the flip side to that is, no, this is a public square, and they're violating the First Amendment, and we need to get laws in place to stop this. Now, I have problems with both of those point of views. So the point of view that the private companies, they can do whatever they want. They can, I suppose, and also, but the thing is, they do not equally apply, and clearly they act as a cabal, which might even be a conspiracy, because they work together. All of them somehow had it for Alex Jones, but don't seem to have it for anyone else. So I don't necessarily subscribe to that argument. But then I also don't subscribe to the argument that the government's got to step in and tell them, knock it off, and you got to give everybody access. Then you just have government control all over again. Again, I take a different view. My view is that, one, if you don't like Alex Jones or don't watch it. This stuff I don't understand why, if you don't like content, then don't look at it. You're worried what somebody else looks at, mind your business. But putting that aside, I view it as a contract issue. Meaning, when you sign up, yes, they tell you we can boot you for any reason. Not necessarily how they word it, but they say the terms of use. The issue I have is, though, in all of these instances, these companies, it's not like they're making the platform available to you for free, and therefore, since it's free, they can kick you out. They're actually benefiting by your presence And also there's a contract, implied or otherwise, and also through the contract that with the terms of use, when you sign up and you put your content up there, you begin to rely on their access, and they're also making money from the fact that you're bringing people to their platform. And for them then to cancel your contract, because there is an implied contract, once you rely on it, you're making revenue. Even if you're not using their monetization, you're adding to their platform and you're adding visitors, and that's the whole basis of their business. There's nothing else that they have. They have your data. They benefit off of mining your data, even if they do it in a non-personal way, meaning just they have a profile on you. They don't necessarily, they do probably get drilled down right to the specifics of who you are, but even if they don't, just the fact that they have you on the platform and it can put you into different genders, different economic classes, time on the site, and so on, you're giving them a benefit, and you're benefiting as well. So I view that as a contract, and I view that when you kick somebody off without giving them specific reasons for violation of terms of service, I think you're violating the contract, because you clearly, Alex Jones brings people to the platform, and clearly those people haven't just looked at Alex Jones content, they looked at other content, and the tech giants made money off of those visitors that Alex Jones brought to the platform. Or maybe he didn't bring them there, but they went to his site and after they were brought by somebody else, but then they continue to go elsewhere. So he either brought them there or kept them on the site, and the platforms benefited from his content. Now, if they don't like the content, well, then I would think that as part of the contract, they have to tell you specifically what it is that they don't like. They don't get together with all the other tech companies and say, yeah, we don't like this either, so why don't we all just boot him? Now, what I found especially odd was a point made by one of our followers, Marvis Sarcasticus. He noted that Alex Jones was booted from LinkedIn, but apparently he never posted anything there, so how could that be a terms of service use? Now, granted, since he hadn't used it, there's no real loss to him there, and I can see somebody saying, we don't want you on our platform. That's different, and you're not allowed on the platform. That's okay. That under contract, they can deny bringing you on because they just don't want you on. I don't think they have to provide you fair access to LinkedIn. But in this case, he was kicked off, so I don't think that LinkedIn did anything wrong, but it's a bit of a nonsense to say they kicked him off for terms of service. But for the tech giants that had him on the platforms and essentially encouraged and allowed him to rely on their platform, and they benefited too, whether they make it sound like only Alex Jones benefited from having access. It is a symbiotic relationship. It is a contract as far as I'm concerned. And if they don't tell you why, see, LinkedIn can tell them, we don't want you on the platform, but they can't say it's not they can't say it's terms of service. But the others have to tell him, I believe, what he did wrong. And generally in a contract, there's things called breaches. There's minor breaches, major breaches, and so on. It can't be so one-sided that it's because we say so and because we talk to Google and Google talk to Apple and Apple talk to Facebook, and we think that you shouldn't be on the platform. Now, obviously, there's also political influence, and I'm very shocked at this because, first of all, here is Bill de Blasio. He says, without Fox News, we'd be a more unified country without them. Well, that's nonsense. That's like saying without MSNBC, we'd be more unified. Without any news outlet that takes a particular point of view, we'd be more unified. It's not true. He's basically saying if everyone just agreed with me, we'd be more unified. That's not how the world works. So getting rid of Fox isn't going to change anything, no more than getting rid of CNN. And as I say, if you don't like if you don't like CNN, don't watch it. If you don't like Alex Jones, Fox News, I just don't watch things I don't want to see. And I actually think what Apple did, at least by having the app available for Alex Jones, is a smart move, because that actually, you cannot argue that no one's going to download that app unless they want to watch Alex Jones. But still, I don't think they should have booted him without providing specifically what terms of service, again, on contract grounds, that they had booted him off. Now here's Facebook, and here's another point. Facebook, the banks, give us your data and we'll give you our users. Same thing. There is value in you being on Facebook to Facebook. It's not, they're just letting you be on there for free. They're monetizing the hell out of your data. Now, besides de Blasio saying, yeah, we'd be better off if there wasn't Fox, there was another guy, what was his name? Chris Murphy, I believe his name was. He is a senator, and he's supposed to know a bit about the Constitution, and he says, yeah, we have to get rid of, I think it was Alex Jones. I don't know who he was saying we should get rid of it. It was under the same concept. Yeah, InfoWars is the tip of a giant iceberg of hate and lies and uses sites like Facebook and YouTube to tear our nation apart. Now, having an opposing viewpoint or just having a wacky viewpoint is not necessarily tearing the nation apart. That's what the whole First Amendment Founding Fathers concept was, that people are going to have these opposing views and they're supposed to battle them out and may the best argument win. But it says these companies must do more than take down one website. The survival of our democracy depends on it, says Senator Chris Murphy. The survival of our democracy doesn't depend on taking down left-wing websites or right-wing websites. It depends on allowing both to flourish. And again, I would think, rationally, that the only sites that you would take down are the ones that specifically either, and you can have it clearly spelled out in the terms of service, and they do. They say you can have threats of violence, but people get their websites taken, their social media accounts dinged, not necessarily for things that you see in the terms of service, like threats and violence and so on. And then they have this nebulous concept of hate speech. Now, I view hate speech as something that you don't like. If I take a view that I don't like X and you like X, then I've just committed hate speech. But if I say I don't like Y, and you don't like Y either, well, that's fine. That's not hate speech. That's just the way things are. That's free speech. So I'm just surprised that people not really fully understanding. It's not about they've turned it into get Alex Jones rather than, and then get other sites that they don't like, rather than really thinking through what's the best way to go forward. And I would think a contract would be the best way to go forward. And I think upholding the contract, and a lot of contracts are void if they're vague. And I think that the terms of service in these contracts, these terms of service, are very vague because they give all the power to the social media provider as well. Not only are they vague, they're in a sense contracts of adhesion. Because in a contract of adhesion, what they're saying is that the user is at a disadvantage. So a contract doesn't have the same bargaining power, because if he wants to be on these social media sites, he's got to agree to the terms of service. So it's a one-sided contract, and generally these types of one-sided contracts are not enforced. So I view it as, again, is a contract issue. I believe that's how they should fight this. I don't like the idea of forcing a company to be a public utility and force everybody on it, because they're never gonna, they'll always find ways if they don't like you and they own it. It's just like you force somebody, they're allowed to come into your house, and you force them and you say they have to be able to come in your house. Then you have to monitor, make sure that you're nice to them when they come into your house. It's just not the way to go. I know it sounds appealing to get the government to do something, but I also don't like the idea that, well, they're just a public company, they can do what they want. Because if you take that point of view, then you could say, well, the lunch counters are just lunch counters, they can discriminate. The baker can discriminate against whoever he wants. Now, there is an argument, you could make those arguments, but they're not consistent. You can't say that the tech companies can do whatever they want when there's cases, Supreme Court cases, that basically say, no, if you use the government and you're part, or you're quasi-public, you are public, you cannot discriminate. So that's the state of law. So I don't go with the argument that they can do whatever they want. I would think that they can do whatever they want, provided they have clear guidelines and they abide by those guidelines. But I would also say that the on-ramping can't be that we don't want you on the platform unless they can point to something. They can't point to you and say, oh, I see, you are the Republican committee and, well, we're just not going to put you on. Well, that would be discriminatory. Or if they've seen in your past that you've advocated violence, that might be a reason to keep you off. But if they just see that you belong to a certain group and that group is not known, you may dislike the group, but is not known for advocating violence or whatever, then I don't think they should be able to keep you off. All right, well, that was a bit of time on that, but I think it's important because basically what I'm doing is broadcasting ideas. Now, Tesla, I just don't understand what's going on with Tesla. I don't understand what's going on Elon Musk. But here he says, I'm considering taking Tesla private at 420, funding secured. Now, this kind of statement, this type of statement is material. And you just don't spring it on investors on Twitter, especially without a bit more detail. You have material facts that can be misinterpreted. The general rule is, while they do say recently you can use social media, but not like this. Generally what you file is a press release. It has the material information. Your lawyers look at it, your bankers look at it, your accountants look at it. If you actually are doing this, he said he's considering it, and then later on he said that he had it already as a done deal. Not enough information in this tweet. I just don't understand who would want to take it private, because generally the concept of taking something private is the company is more valuable private than it would be public. But the company has been awarded such a massive market cap being public, it's being valued on the basis of no profit. So I don't know how, if you owned it outright, how you would benefit from it. The real value in it, as far as I can see, and this isn't investment advice, is that it doesn't make any money. So why would you want to own it other than for the stock appreciation, which you won't get if you take it private? I just wanted to know, did the Tesla board discuss and approve this to take this government subsidized Tesla private at a specific price? Now the SEC is making an increase into it. Very big. The Tesla board says that they never saw a financing plan from Musk. He's just popping off. It appears. So I don't know. I just think that it's amazing that company has to. Again, I'm not saying buy or sell Tesla. I'm just stunned at what he gets away with, and the price continues to hold. I mean, it's just so obviously, to me, it looks like a train wreck. He's out there popping off about this. He's predicting cash flow positive, and then it's not. He walks out on, this is Elon Musk, walks out on investor calls, tweets that he's going to take it private for a price much higher than the current price. Whew. All right, well, a lot's still going on with Mueller and Giuliani and Trump, and really no what's the word, resolution yet in place. Giuliani's basically saying, and so is his other attorney, Smaulgld, I think his name is, they're not going to sit down with Mueller unless they're on specific terms. So who knows what they're going to do here, how this is going to get resolved, but we'll follow it. And of course, Trump is calling it the witch hunt, and there's nothing new in all this. There's two sides to this. One side believes Trump colluded, he's a traitor, he's a Russian. The other side says there's no evidence of that, and that the real collusion and trading is on the conspiracy to get Hillary exonerated and to go after Trump on phony charges. So we don't know the final outcome of this yet, but we're not getting any more new information. Here's Giuliani saying it's time for Attorney General Sessions to appoint a special counsel to investigate the conspiracy to defeat Trump by buying and disseminating false dossiers, obtaining legal wires, and commencing baseless FBI investigations. Both sides pointing fingers at each other. Well, new Nigerian email scam. You've been selected for a special business opportunity. Oh, this is because Nigeria has taken first steps in adopting China's yuan as a reserve currency. So now you're not just going to get these emails from the Nigerian scammers asking for you to give them their bank account so they can wire you dollars. They're going to now wire you yuan, it looks like. Now, all this stuff with the tariffs, it is finally starting to permeate into the markets. Here it says dark cloud of trade hovers over yuan, Chinese yuan globalization. I don't think the yuan was getting anywhere near gaining a foothold in globalizing itself, but this certainly isn't helping. Here you go, China to crush the dollar, gold back yuan, game changer, dollar collapse, dollars days are numbered, end of dollar hegemony, multipolar world when the gold back yuan, petro yuan is launched. There it is. Boom. So much for that story. It was never true in the first place. Yuan eases to set longest losing streak in 9 weeks. There it is. There's the Chinese RMB compared to the US dollar. Dollar soaring against The yuan, game changer. End of dollar hegemony. Yeah, so now both countries back and forth with the list of what they have, what they're going to put tariffs on. Tit for tat. U.S. is $16 billion worth of Chinese goods. China says $16 billion worth of U.S. goods. Then China starts warning that they're going to use Apple as a bargaining chip. So I asked my followers on Twitter, should the U.S. cave to Chinese demand or toss Apple under the bus? And just about everyone said toss Apple under the bus. I suppose it was right after they had also exerted themselves in booting Alex Jones off of their platform. But here you go. U.S. oil vanishing from Chinese tariffs reveals America's clout. So China is no longer going to target oil. That's because they need it. And that's the whole idea, my concept of the new petrodollar backed by Saudi oil and U.S. oil, because the U.S. is a big oil player now as well. It is on the ascendancy, and Saudi Arabia is on the decline. And here you go, Trump administration to seize stake in Chinese-owned building. So people are starting to try to block China now in the last 6 months. But here you go. Harley Davidson's owners plan to boycott the company if manufacturing moves overseas, says Trump. Harley Davidson is impacted now by these tariffs, and they're thinking about offshoring their production in Europe. And here, another impact of the tariffs. South Carolina television maker says it's laying off more than 100 workers, nearly all its staff, because of the tariffs, making it hard for them to get the parts cheaper from China. And China's attacking Trump, and so we're getting this back and forth. China says it won't shoot itself in the foot by weaponizing the yuan, not that that would work anyway. And the police have shut down Chinese Beijing financial district to prevent protesters by investors who are angry at the government for not doing anything about their losses from these peer-to-peer lending. So it doesn't look good for both sides, but the real question is who's going to win the trade war? I would think the U.S. has less to lose than China, but other people differ. I did do a long podcast with Jason Barak at Wall Street for Main Street, so you can check that out. We discuss it at length. And China says it has a stealth $410 billion stash to boost the economy. I'm sure they do. Newt Gingrich here popping off about the Chinese routinely cheating, ripping us off, so to speak, using the same language that Trump uses. Now, Turkey, we talked about this in an entire podcast, but the Turkey hits a record low, and Turkey's not backing down. They're saying, look, you put these tariffs on us, well, we're going to ride it out, and you're doing this all over a pastor. You're willing to give up a NATO relationship? And then the question back to them is, yeah, are you willing to give up a NATO relationship for a pastor? I think they just want the guy released. Yeah, because they're going to be locked out of the bond markets. It's really not good. I mean, Turkey benefits far more from the NATO relationship than the U.S. does. Turkey would do far better if the U.S. didn't have these tariffs. So he's really being stubborn. But he says God was on his side. I thought he said gold. We have our gold. He actually said we have our God. And then, of course, we talked about how he said to sell dollars to buy lira. He's trying to strengthen the lira. Now, we've shown charts of this. The lira is getting clobbered, not just against the dollar, but against gold. And I think the people who have gold in Turkey are happy that they have it, and they're probably not looking to sell it all in one go anytime soon. So big depreciation, 15-20%. And that's falling over, and the euro was impacted during the week because they've got exposure to Turkey. The Russian ruble fell. There's all the exposure to Turkey. 83 billion in Spain. All the European countries have big exposure to Turkey. Russia heading down with the ruble. The Kazakhstan 10, same thing. Remember, this is something we talked about. Why central banks are buying gold hand over fist. That is all you need to know. That is why I am buying gold. Well, the three countries buying gold, central banks, were Turkey, Kazakhstan, and Russia. That gold is not helping their currency one bit. And remember, all three countries have their own gold mining supply. And people say, be like the Chinese, be like the Russians, be like the Turks, and be like the Kazakhstanis and buy gold. They know it is coming. You're not like them. You don't have a gold mining operation in your backyard. At least I don't think you do. And you don't have a weak currency. You have a dollar. So if you can print dollars, you would. You wouldn't buy gold. It doesn't make any sense. These countries are buying gold because their currencies are weak as hell. And they need to have some reserve that they can count on other than their own currency. And maybe they don't want to have dollars, so gold certainly is a good choice. But if you have dollars, the dollar's doing better than gold this year. That may argue for, well, maybe it's a good time to get gold because gold is a safe haven too, and the dollar can't go up that high. But you can see how people just misinterpret what these countries are doing because they want to believe that the answer is gold. They are buying gold. Central banks are buying gold. So therefore, I am buying gold too. They are smart. No, they're not smart. They're protecting themselves from a different risk that you might have. I'm not saying that you can't protect yourself with gold, but you are not like Russia. You are not like Kazakhstan, and you are not like Turkey. Your currency is not under attack unless you are Turkish, Russian, or Kazakhstan citizen. And you don't have ready access to buy gold out of your backyard from your own domestic mining supply. Very important distinction. I was looking into this. It's minor interest, but there's 100,000 payphones still in the U.S. I haven't seen one anywhere around, but they say they have them. And there's about 2,000 ATMs, Bitcoin ATMs. And I asked the question, is there going to be a point where the Bitcoin ATMs outnumber the payphones? I guess there will be. Not because there's going to be 100,000 Bitcoin ATMs, but because I would imagine they continue to shut down these payphones. What else? Now, this was the big story. I really think this is a big story. When you have Starbucks and Microsoft working with the New York Stock Exchange, and they're the big deal, where they're trying to come up with a way of having a platform to buy, sell, and store cryptocurrencies. That just shows the big money moving in, and this is my point about my middle position. They're not going to try to ban it, and they're not going to try to shut it down, and it's not going to put the big companies and the big banks out of business. They're going to embrace it, and this is exactly what I think this deal is just an example of. New York Stock Exchange, Starbucks, Microsoft. Everybody said, well, Starbucks not really accepting Bitcoin, but that's not a big deal. The idea is that if they wanted to, anyone can accept Bitcoin. You just get a payment processor and you say, pay me Bitcoin. The payment processor interposes itself and you get paid in your fiat. That's what Starbucks is looking to help people do. And the fact that they're willing to do that means that they will accept Bitcoin, not Bitcoin. They don't want, no one wants to hold Bitcoin other than a speculator. It's too risky. But if you can accept Bitcoin, they said basically they're working to help people convert their Bitcoin into dollars so they can buy their coffee with it. So that's actually the same thing, really. Game changer. And everybody's talking about the death of Bitcoin. Game over. And there's still work going on with Lightning networks and all these things. You know, you have all this work. This is what impressed me about Bitcoin in the first place after I gave up on it in 2011 or 12, whatever it was. Whenever I followed it, I looked at it, I said, okay, that's nice. I don't really see it. I don't get it. And it went up to $1,000. And I said, there's basically no reason for this. You don't need it. Then I changed my mind when India overnight just said the money that you have in your pocket isn't worth anything. And I thought to myself, wow, that's an unbacked currency. Bitcoin's an unbacked currency, but they can't do that to Bitcoin. There is no one person who said, well, from now on, the Bitcoin's not worth anything. And that made me think, okay, if we're in this type of system where you don't have backed currencies, I thought that was preferable. But what really impressed me was even though the price dropped, the people working on Bitcoin projects continue to work on. They continue to work on it to this day. So that's why I kind of think it's here to stay. So you had this Bitcoin ETF from Van Eck get shut down from the SEC. I covered the reasons for this. The main reason is the SEC isn't comfortable that there's not a U.S. or a foreign exchange that they can actually surveil and figure out whether there's fraud going on or manipulation. But eventually there will be that, and maybe that New York Stock Exchange project. And if that's the case, eventually I think the SEC will approve a Bitcoin ETF. And if you get one, you can get a lot of them. Goldman Sachs here, considering a plan to offer custody for crypto funds. They're not going to shut anything down that Goldman Sachs is involved in, that the CFTC is involved in, that Microsoft, Starbucks, New York Stock Exchange is involved. Anyone who thinks they're just going to ban it, no, they're going to go after bad actors. They're going to register exchanges, and then you're going to have to buy everything on exchange. They're going to monitor off things that you do off the exchange. Then they'll monitor that for tax evasion. They'll monitor it for money laundering, used for nefarious means. But if it's just a financial asset, so to speak, to buy and sell and to be taxed, they're all for that, I'm sure. They're going to be against that. Bitcoin Cash and Ethereum and Bitcoin go to wash. And there you go. Chairman Goodlatte, this guy, he owns $80,000 worth of cryptocurrencies. What are they going to do, arrest him? police raid Korean company which claimed to have found sunken ship full of gold. Well, the first thing I read when I read this story, they said there was some like $400 billion worth of gold, and it was like 200 tons. And I thought, that's not $400 billion worth of gold. That's worth about 6 or 7 billion or some lower number. But they were trying to do a token IPO or something like that. Yeah, here's one. Gold shortage, peak gold. Well, mine production increased again in the second quarter to a record, highest second quarter on record, up 3% year over year. So we're not running out. Eventually, yes, under the way, if they're only going to look for gold and the way they look for gold today, and only in the places they look today, and only with the mines they have today, and only with the technology they have today, they will have to stop. The amount of gold that they'll pull out of the ground will start to slow. But that may not be where it goes. There may be innovations. There may be underground, undersea mining, mining in the ocean, and so on. So who knows? They may have new discoveries. You can't just say game over, it's all over. Here's a nice looking thing that they found. Greek rule in Jerusalem, ancient gold earrings. Very pretty there. All right, well, that about does it. Thank you very much for joining me today. And remember to join us each and every night. Tonight we'll be on at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on YouTube for a live stream. And don't forget, you can visit the Smaulgld store and get your Smaulgld branded products. And thank you very much, and we will see you tonight.